here again. Made it again. October 30th. Wednesday? Wednesday. We're all live again. Another beautiful day. Sort of. It's pouring rain, but it's still a beautiful day, right? Now, what do we got going? Any updates on anything? Yesterday, I went to support my the superhero ladies yesterday. I always go support when I get called upon by them if I can, without a question about it. Powerful presentation, another one. I've sat through the same one a few times about exactly what went down in her personal residential school journey and other family members and friends. And God, it's such a gut-wrenching, nasty story. Amazing how much of a kind, loving person came out of it. It just amazes me. And very gut-wrenching story. And it's not being heard. I mean, our government goes about things the wrong way. They shouldn't be in charge of anything. But sadly, a lot of people look to the government for answers or apologies or trying to make things better. It's not going to work. The only thing that happens to make things better is community, right? We've proven it here. Community, nobody gives a shit what race you are, what age you are, what shape you're in, what you drive or what you wear. Nobody gives a shit. It's just a tight community, right? No matter what. That's who needs to hear these stories and pass them around, is the community. And that's how you create a tight community, again, when you support each other, listen to each other. You know what I mean? Anyway, I got to figure out a way to get that story heard on a more vast audience. There's another thing that I want to try to do. It wouldn't be too hard, but it's definitely something I'm going to look to doing in the near future. It needs to be heard. It's like anybody else. It sucks when you get violated, any one of us, when somebody violates your ass in any way, especially family or whoever, and they don't acknowledge it. It really sucks, right? It just sucks not to be heard, not to be able to get your side of the story out. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, did that yesterday. And it turns out I have to pack today. I have to leave tomorrow morning early due to other items that came up. So, this will be the last video from here for a while. And I think I mentioned this the other day. So, allegedly, the Starlink service through Elon Musk, you had one package where the dish worked from a stationary position. And then if you want to upgrade for like your boating style dish, so you'd attach it to your boat, it was a lot more money to pay. And now, and it's not that much money anyway. The Starlink was actually less than our regular telephone bill was here from the province, from Canada. So that's what we have. We have Starlink on the house, and I have Starlink here in the man cave, and I take it down and take it with me when I go off on my journeys and have it on the dock and stuff. So allegedly now, he's made it so that they all work on the fly. Wow. That means I can have it on my boat and I can live feed fishing. I could just hit play or hit a live feed on the boat starting first light in the morning and let her rip. And everybody can just tune in every once in a while and see what's going on for catching fish or not. Wouldn't that be crazy? Well, it's going to be crazy. I'm going to do it. So I'm going to strap the dish onto the front of my quad, and my quad goes into the box of my truck. And I was concerned about the wind maybe driving the highway, but those things are made to go on the roofs of buildings. So obviously they're constructed for wind. And everybody else up north, all the oil field and logging trucks, etc., seem to have the 1-ton trucks, pickups, flat decks. Everybody seems to be having the dish attached to their truck. So I'll be able to do that. And that means I can... All right, I'll stop babbling. But I'm just saying the possibilities are endless of what I can live stream to all of you coming up shortly, including my trip up north. So I'm kind of stoked at that. And I'll have to really think about that and be a little creative. Because I should be able to plug it into my quad, too. Maybe. Now, who do we got? There's always somebody. There's no shortage. There's no shortage, ever, of people wanting to share their truth with all you. It's great, isn't it? I noticed, isn't it crazy? Have you noticed, one more quick note, have all you noticed, if, you know, once you watch a particular themed video online, your feed will be saturated with typical themed suggestions, right? Because I definitely do not watch, on average, I don't watch Bigfoot, Sasquatch related videos. The odd one, but not very often. And, but it sure seems it's a popular topic to talk about right now, isn't it? On mainstream social media, like on YouTube, I guess. Other channels, there's a lot of people who've got channels talking to people or interviewing people about their experiences. Have you noticed that? Or am I just not noticing what's been going on the past handful of years? There's a lot of people talking about it. Now, whether that's because a lot of people are seeing, or there's, I don't know the demeanor, the main theme of a lot of these channels, are they just doing it to make a buck? I don't know. I haven't a clue. Or are they legitimate, give a shit about all of you? I don't know, I hope so. Now, let's read this. This is titled Sasquatch. And if you hear some noises, Adventure Dog's down here chewing on her bone, and I don't mind. This is going to be our last day together for quite some time, so. And she's going to go a little squirrely when I leave. I'm not sure if it's too late to attach to my first email, but another odd experience within 20 miles happened as well. You are a fellow bow hunter, and probably well know that when you smoke a deer, they run into the thickest, nastiest place to die. My same friend I was coyote hunting with had shot a buck with his bow. He asked me to help retrieve the deer because I had more experience blood trailing, and it was a high lung hit, so the deer wasn't bleeding much. The deer was shot on a ridge and ran into one of the steepest hollers I've ever seen. It is hand over hand climbing sapling dogwoods and redbuds to get out of there. We found his deer and was helping him to gut it. We faced the hind quarters of the deer downhill to help with the draining of the blood. And I held onto the front legs to make sure the deer didn't slide down the super steep holler. I always wear a hat while hunting, and this becomes important in a minute. When he was halfway done with the deer, something smacked into the nose below my eye. Something smacked into my nose below my eye. It bounced off of me and hit my friend in the jacket. He stopped and asked what the hell was that? We looked down to find a large red oak acorn. There's absolutely no way this acorn could have fell and hit me. I was wearing a cap. Therefore, it couldn't hit my face from above. It hit me from a lateral angle. The holler is so steep that the other side directly across isn't very far away across, and I'm assuming whatever was over there chucked it from that side. After the acorn hit me, everything was completely still. My buddy was terrified, but I told him to keep going because, as much as I wanted to, there was no sense in letting this nice buck go to waste. We had a long drag up to the top of the hill to the pickup truck, and I could swear I could hear something across the holler. But as a hunter, you have a job to do, and we did it. We loaded the truck and left. Thanks for listening. I hope my experience rings true with other hunters out there to pay attention to what goes on around you. I used to have a really hard time believing all the stories, but it's starting to come together in my head. Thanks for listening. All right, there you go. Now, that was October 29th. That was sent. Now, the next one here is March 12th. Same man. Hello, Steve. I have a few short stories to share with you, and I'm sure you get hammered with emails, so I'll try to keep it quick. A little background. I'm 22, and have probably spent more time in the timber than most people get to in their lives. Hunting is not just a passion, it's a priority. Whatever time of year that I can be in the woods chasing game legally, I will. Once deer and duck season have passed, I usually like to chase predators. A few years back, a buddy of mine and I were hunting coyotes in the dead center of the Ozark Mountains. You can legally red light hunt coyotes with the proper permits. I did that one time in West Virginia with foxes. It was so creepy because I didn't even know you could do that. And they played a recording. We got in the box of the truck, stood in the box of the truck, over the cab, drove into the middle of nowhere, thick bush in this truck. These two guys. And they had a recorder and the speaker, and they hit the recorder, and it made fox pup sounds rip out into the darkness. And they had red lenses on the spotlight, and all of a sudden you see the beady red eyes running right up to the truck. It's crazy. Weird experience for me. Sorry. We were up on one of our bigger mountains in our area at around 2 a.m. Our mountains aren't massive, but they were very steep, and this spot was no different. There's a small trail that switched back down a bluff wall into an incredibly thick briar and sapling bottom that we were hoping to call a coyote or bobcat out of. We made it to the bottom of the bluff, called our set, and started to make our way back out to the next area. And as you can imagine, a red light adds an eerie tint to the area around. Does it ever? The bottom was dead calm, but the mountain was ripping with wind all around us. I started to have a really bad gut feeling as we were switchbacking our way back up the bluff wall. I kept pointing my rifle to the tops of the bluffs, scanning for a reason I can't explain. My buddy felt the feeling too and started to look with me. At the top of the second switchback, we stopped and looked to the top of a 100-foot wet weather waterfall, dripping water above us. When we stopped, our lights managed to fall at the same spot where there were some car-sized boulders at the top. At that moment, 3 rocks around the size of baseballs came airborne over the top of the bluff, right where the next switchback led up to. They hit 10 feet in front of us and bounced to our feet. My buddy looked at me and I looked back, and then we hauled ass, back to back, scanning the timber and bluffs the whole way. We never saw anything and went through all possibilities. There is no way a person would be throwing rocks at 2 a.m. at 2 armed men 45 minutes down a steep, snow-covered dirt road in the middle of nowhere. We were afraid that the sound of our dying rabbit call may have attracted it, and it has stuck into the back of my mind every time I sneak to a deer spot in the dark. Me too, every time. I would share my father's story, but I was not there. And I wouldn't want to get any details wrong. He had a sighting in the mid-90s. I'll attach a picture one of my dad's elk hunting buddies sent him from a creek bed in the Rockies, miles and miles on horseback from civilization, while preparing to guide a few hunters. He photographed footprints following this creek bed for a short distance, and then it left into the surrounding timber. Good wishes to you. And good wishes to you, too. There you go. There's the photo. Is that close enough? Another footprint photo. Middle of the Rockies, middle of nowhere, heading off into the timber. Be cool if he, I wonder if he has a photo of the track line, like all the prints in a row. Wouldn't make any difference to me, but there's a lot of people here that would be interested in seeing that, or even hearing from him. Especially if he's a fellow hunting guide. Maybe pass him this video, maybe, if you want. And he might be a little more receptive to sharing what he's seen and what he knows. All right, this one seems like a fairly lengthy email. Did I read this? Here's one. I don't know what this is about. It's titled Mid-Brain. Hey, Steve, thanks for all you do. Our appreciation for the real issues, i.e. lies, controlling governments, etc., keeps me coming back several times a day. Excuse me. Your take on Sasquatch, I believe to be right on strike, and your honesty and character are beyond reproach in my book. It's been my honor to know a couple of men that are a lot like you, and I hold a special bit of admiration for those guys. Major respect. Right on, man. Appreciate those kind words. Appreciate that. Thank you. I wanted to give you perhaps another perspective of our sixth sense. Okay, I'm all over it, man. I'm by no means a scientist, but I do have a better than average understanding of anatomy and physiology, as well as a really good understanding of the addiction process. Yes, I'm one of those guys who couldn't leave alcohol alone until I got help. The educational process was amazing, and I have to give full credit to the angels and saints of the Betty Ford Center. Those people are amazing. Anyway, back to the sixth sense. Good for you, man. You're a strong man. The disease of addiction occurs in the midbrain. In order to understand it, one has to have a basic understanding of the midbrain. Stay with me. The midbrain is our lizard brain, our primal brain that sits right at the top of our spinal cord. The midbrain has one and only one responsibility. It doesn't think. It doesn't feel pain. It doesn't feel emotion or rationalize. Again, it does one thing and one thing only. It gets us through the next 15 seconds, and that's it. In that pursuit of getting us through the next 15 seconds, it tells us to do three things. Number one, it tells when to eat/drink. Number two, it tells when to make little people like us, and maybe the most important. Number three, it immediately tells us whether to fight or take flight. Sometimes, usually, before we are even cognizant of the portending risk or danger. Go figure. Does that sound familiar? Our other senses lend a hand to the midbrain's fight or flight response, but are in no way the driving force. While I wholeheartedly agree with your thoughts about the issue, how we've been dumbed down and society has for the most part desensitized our abilities, I wonder if that ability of ours isn't something more than one of our obvious recognized senses: smell, touch, sight. It makes you wonder if perhaps that part of one's brain can be conditioned to be on alert more often, to listen to that quiet voice and try to avoid rationalization. I wonder if one couldn't grow that sense with genuine effort. I guess my point is that our instinct for survival is a very real part of our anatomy and brain, and not some abstract theory about sensing danger. That part of our brain is designed for just that. Just like our knees or other joints, it has a precise function, and to deny it or write it off is nothing short of foolish. Yet many think that sixth sense is little more than a fairy tale. Something to think about. Keep up the great work. My first job at a university was working for an old man who pounded in my head a simple saying, quote, "There's no stopping a good man who knows he's in the right and keeps coming," end quote. Bingo. That's you, Steve. Hang in there and never give up the fight. You're crushing it. All right, man. Appreciate that. I appreciate those kind words. I don't have quit in me. I know a lot of you don't have quit in you either. Thank God. Thank God there's no quit. Who's next? That's interesting, though, isn't it? I'm sure a lot of you can relate. Right? Very interesting. Now, I have caught a couple emails here in this other folder I opened up in my notes. They weren't marked as read, but I read them before. How the hell does that happen? Hello, Steve. I've been watching your content on YouTube for years now. Your first few posts on the topic of Sasquatch garnered my attention, and I've been meaning to contact you for about a year now since seeing your testimonial. I experienced an incident about 20 years ago in a wildlife management unit contained in a large tract of mountain range in northern West Virginia. I've kept my experience to myself, other than a handful of trusted individuals. A group of 6 of us had embarked on our annual 1-week whitetail hunt in West Virginia, staking a rustic camp in an outfitter's tent about 8 miles from civilization. On opening day, we all left camp at about 4 a.m., driving a mile down a dead-end road to a parking lot where we happily discovered that we were the only ones there at that hour. We all walked the same trailhead back in a deep mountain hollow. Single file, and one by one, a member of our party would detach and continue on their own to their hunting positions located within the same mountain hollow, within 2 miles of the lot we all parked. with no other soul around, and miles of distance between us and the next road. As the fifth person detached and exchanged farewells, I continued down the trailhead alone to my location about 2 miles back before the hollow trail starts to ascend the gut between two mountains. As I neared my break from the main trailhead, I heard a distinct sound. I heard a sound that stopped me in my tracks. It lasted about 4 to 7 seconds and did not conjure up any image of any native species in my catalog of identifiable sounds incurred over my lifetime in the outdoors. That's the dog chewing the bone. If you just came in here late, she's right here chewing on her elk bone. As I stood there waiting to hear it again, it performed this moaning howl. A few seconds later, again, nothing native came to mind, but the closest thing it sounded like to me was a cow moose. And I'm in West Virginia. So, no. By this time, the hair on the back of my neck to my scalp and down my spine is raised, and I unshouldered my rifle to assure I chambered around to my 30-30, only for it to perform this moaning howl a third time before going silent. Knowing how much land was between the next road and myself, it made no sense as someone would traverse that much real estate at the hour when they could access from where we parked. And since we were the only ones parked at that lot, I simply deduced that there is no idiot in the world out there goofing around. I've searched bear vocalizations and nothing compares. Nearly 20 years lapsed without me telling anyone but camp members and one or two more. I recently heard some audio recordings that came from Ohio. When I hit play, I literally slid my chair back and ripped the headphones off. It took me back to that day, and has been the only sound that matches what I heard alone in the wilds of West Virginia. For what it's worth, keep up the solid work. Much respect. Corey. Okay, man. Gotcha. Picking up what you're putting down. You know what it was? I've been in those hills in West Virginia. And they are pretty steep, aren't they? Must be absolutely stunning, beautiful in the autumn. But I've been around there. There's a lot of sightings in West Virginia. Now, this next one has a whole bunch of pictures. And it's titled Broken Trees. Hi, Steve. Just want to start by saying thank you for continuing the good fight and helping those in need of information regarding these beings. My condolences on your horse as well. Truly tough situation. I've seen your recent post regarding the broken and snapped off trees while elk hunting with buddies. I thought I'd share a few pictures of the destruction we discovered on a hike into the 20,000-acre Salt Fork State Park in Ohio back in May of this year. I know this type of thing doesn't trip your trigger once you've actually seen these beings for yourself, but perhaps these can be shared as a learning tool to others not aware of such occurrences. I ruled out wind damage on the one pic of the green leafy splintered tree because there are several 3 to 4 inch diameter trees nearby, completely dead, and had this been wind, they would be blown over. Good detective work. The leafy canopy was resting right next to the hiking trail, as if meant to be seen and send a message. Keep out, this is their area. Every pic I sent is within public view, again as if it were a signal meant to be purposely seen by man. Anyways, enough on the tree breaks. I don't need to be convinced these things are out there. The stories and proof are all around us. People just need to open their eyes and see it. And P.S. for those who care, the bigger tree snapped off at a 90-degree angle. Sorry, for those who care. The bigger tree snapped off at a 90-degree angle is broken at 10 feet above ground, with tree leaners nearby. It would take a machine to do that, and who's got the time to drag a machine 75 yards off the road inside a state park? Best wishes, safe travels, Scott in Wisconsin. All right, and here they are. All right, there we go. Interesting. Nothing overly new, though, at this stage of the game for people who have seen some weird things going on with timber, right? Now, 1 second. So the other day, yesterday? Was it yesterday? Day before yesterday. The dog and I went off into the woods and got my cameras, my trail cameras, and I think I mentioned there was a tree, spruce tree, about like that. Green. Surrounded by big timber on the bend of this old deactivated road. It's a little creepy driving in there. Whatever. I've been there a few times and I never see anybody's tracks going in there up the side of this mountain. And it wasn't broken before, and it was snapped off just like one of these photos. Probably, I don't know, maybe 10, 12, 13 feet up in the air, snapped clean off and laying down on the road. It looked the exact same size as one that was broken off up in near the same area where all those trees are broken off. And I shared that video. And we drove up this along the Peace River, drove up this old trail, came up to an old cabin, dead end, no wind, dead quiet, and we turned around to go back out when it's getting dark. That was a pine tree, spruce tree, about like that, and it was broken in the trunk. There's the top of the tree, the top 12 or 14 feet, the top of 12 or 14 feet of that tree was laying across the road, just like the one I saw I did for yesterday, and just like one of these ones here in the photos. And I went looking around in those thick trees until I found where it came from, and it was snapped off the tree. I took pictures of it and I shared it on here, actually. And it was all the main trunk and the roots were, it was like if you grabbed a tree here and pulled and pushed to snap off the top, wing the top, and then drop the other bottom half, which was about 15 feet, and the root ball in the 15-foot trunk uprooted the root ball, laying on the ground, and the top half pulled back and thrown. You can tell by the brake, direction of the brake, and then tossed in the middle of the road. And that went down while we were at the old cabin, but we didn't hear a thing. And it's close enough, you would have heard that pop. Weird, right? Weird. Anyways, sorry for that little ramble. It's brought back a memory. Now listen to this title. This email titled Yogis. Hi, Steve. I'm glad you're telling these stories. I appreciate this work you are doing. I've somehow known of the Sasquatch most of my life. This is hard to explain, so I won't. I do have a story told to me by a spiritual master who is a Buddha of the Kula and other traditions. Again, that's the dog chewing her bone. For any latecomers. When I say Buddha, this means that he has attained complete enlightenment, and as such, has many capabilities that are surprising to say the least. I witnessed this extrasensory abilities countless times over the past 25 years and can attest to his mastery of the known siddhis. Siddhis? Of course, I'm probably not pronouncing it right. Siddhis. You pronounced it right. Kidding. Supernatural abilities. He spent many years in the Himalayas with his master, and his master sent him to learn from many of the most accomplished yogis of the world. In his many years in the Himalayas, he never encountered a Yeti, but he did encounter a Sasquatch in Alaska. All right. And this is the story he told me earlier this year when I was visiting him. He was in a forest in Alaska, sitting on some boulders above a river, where to his right there were a number of grizzly bears in a river catching fish. He said the grizzlies knew he was there, and they didn't mind, so he was just taking in the beauty of the scene. I should mention that wild creatures do not fear him and often come up to him because they are curious and can sense his non-violent nature. Across from his position was a mountain slope coming down to the river, and that is where he saw a creature coming down the slope. He said from where he sat, there was a large boulder in front of him. So just his eyes and the top of his head were visible from the front for the creature to see. And as he watched the creature coming down the slope, he realized that it was injured. It also became aware of his presence, and that is when the creature did something strange. The master said the creature, quote, projected fear at him, end quote. He said it was clear that the creature had the capability to understand thoughts and project thoughts, and this made it very unique. I asked him more about this because I told him that many hunters and military guys who really have no fear have been scared so badly that they could never return to the deep forests again. He explained that the creature did try to project the feeling of fear into him, but it was not possible because he was a yogi, and as such, fear was just not possible anymore for him. It was actually a little funny to him. All fear left him decades previously in his spiritual development because you give up your life when you sit for enlightenment. You simply vow to enlighten or you die trying. He had been successful in his 40-plus days sit for enlightenment about 4 decades ago. 40-plus days sit. Think about this. Try to sit in a meditation for even 40 minutes, let alone 40 days without getting up. That'd be pretty crazy to watch on time-lapse. I asked more about the creature. He said it walked both on 2 legs and on 4 legs. I asked if it looked like a Sasquatch, and he said yes. But he also said it was projecting a visual presence. As the creature was walking away, it kept looking back at him. He said that is when his head poked out. Now, this is a bit strange, but he said he saw its real head, and it was not what it had been showing. He would not explain more. I got the sense that he was portraying itself as a bear. I got the sense that it was portraying itself as a bear, but maybe he didn't want to give away this secret. Why the hell would he want to share more? Doesn't that suck? Let it all out. He then related a story of some military vets he knew about who had a forest encounter so terrifying to them that none of them could go into the woods again except for one of them. Later, this guy had another encounter with a Sasquatch creature that was not scary, and there was mind speak that went back and forth between them. The Sasquatch could see that the past fright from another Sasquatch had essentially given the man PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder. This Sasquatch was apologetic and showed him how to realize it. Later, that soldier went to see his old vet buddies one by one, and he helped them release the fear that was hindering them. PTSD is exactly what many of the people who write into you are experiencing. The mere thought of the Sasquatch encounter brings on the same feelings of terror and stress because it is embedded in them. PTSD can be released through various means, but maybe the easiest is a process called tapping, which can be learned on YouTube. This might help some of the people who've had this fear, paralyzing them from going to the woods they used to love. I bring these things up because there are a few things that are very clear to me about Sasquatch. Number 1, they can read your mind and project fear into your mind. Number 2, they can change visual form. Number 3, they can mind speak so you hear them in your language or simply know things. Number 4, they can possibly mind speak so that you hear or yell or scream at a level higher than you ever dreamed imaginable. Number 5, when they seem to move quickly, they are not typically moving like a normal creature. They are space jumping, either for real or simply in their mental projection to you. Number 6, the Sasquatch could easily harm you. They do not because it is not in their nature. To scare you is absolutely in their nature. They want to be left alone in their home of the forest, possibly. Number 7, there are other little-known malicious creatures that are likely to cause the cause of many of the 411 investigations, and that's a big subject. As a yogi myself, I have experienced mind speak on 8 occasions. The first time I was about 1.5 years old, and I remember it like it was yesterday. The communication comes to you like you have a set of headphones over your ears. It is clear as a bell, and it comes very fast. I've never heard screaming in mind speak, but I've heard many beings trying to speak at once, and it's a bit overwhelming. I can imagine screaming in mind speak would be shocking and louder than anything you've ever heard. That a Sasquatch can disappear is not so shocking. Advanced yogis can make themselves invisible in a few different ways, and one of the ways is simply not allowing light to reflect from you. You see, our eyes only see the light that is reflected back to it. An accomplished yogi can absorb the light so they appear to not be there. There are some famous photos of the Karmapa of Tibet disappearing in front of 5,000 people while doing the black hat ceremony. What? Capital K A R M A P A of Tibet. He became see-through in this ceremony where he gets a glimpse of enlightenment, and a few naughty people took photos that showed him in this state. LOL, cameras not allowed then, but somebody snuck one in. That's incredible. I want to see that shit. All matter is made from subatomic particles. At their smallest observable essence, these particles are made of light. What many don't know is light is created from sound. When you grasp this, it might make more sense that people who see these Sasquatch creatures in areas where there are these balls of light in the forest and strange sound phenomena. This is simply these creatures in a visible light form. The sound phenomena is them moving light and matter. It also makes sense why you cannot track them. Not only are they just disappearing, they are changing their essential form so there are no footprints to follow. No invisible man tracks. A being appearing out of thin air makes a bit of a strange noise as the body materializes. In the book Autobiography of a Yogi, the author, Yogananda, describes this very thing. Now, there is another possible way that the Sasquatch are doing many of these things. Like the story you told of the cop being chased through the forest and trees falling around him as he went over a mile through the forest, but with no visible Sasquatch doing anything. This other possible way is essentially bending the mind of the subject to perceive something that is not actually there. This is absolutely possible, and I have many stories of examples of this. Suffice it to say that an exceptionally rare, high advanced yogi can do this, like a Sasquatch can do. It requires deep concentration, deep devotion, and inner knowing. I am told that all of us are capable of these things. My master, as a young disciple, was sitting with his master at a cafe in Nepal. Along came a roster that sat down nearby. When it got up, a roster, okay, typo. Along came a rooster that sat down nearby. When it got up, it left behind an egg. Now, roosters don't lay eggs, but old masters playing with their disciples can make a hen look like a rooster to have a little fun. My master's master, my grand master, was quite a prankster and was capable of all kinds of good-hearted mischief to teach his students. While the two were still sitting at the cafe, along came a black panther and sat down begging for food. This startled my grandmaster. Then it pleased him as he realized it was his student projecting a panther onto a dog. Now, as for the Sasquatch, numerous stories show us that they are capable of many things in the realm of light and sound. No surprise there. An interesting account comes from Dr. Matthew Johnson, who says the Sasquatch mentally told him many things. One thing he was told was that they are beings of light, that the reason we can sometimes see them and sometimes not see them is because they are vibrating at higher frequencies that are outside of our visual capabilities. Not hard to believe. Dogs and cats see at night perfectly. We don't. In fact, humans see less than 1% of the actual electromagnetic spectrum, and we call this the visible light spectrum. The aura is visible only when the viewer changes their brainwave state to a more meditative level. Another thing to consider, as I mentioned, there are some malicious creatures in the wild that have not been identified by science. Science can suck it. The Sasquatch have been shown again and again to have non-violent intentions. Could there be other things we're not clearly understanding? Those, quote, damn things, end quote, may well be scaring you away from something really nasty and dangerous. They might be your friends, something to consider. You often talk about the sixth sense we all have. According to my master, we all actually have 108 senses. I've even experienced a good 10 or more. Everyone has thought of an old friend, and then the phone rings, and it is that friend. Everyone has had goosebumps, warn them before dangerous situations. Everyone has had gut feelings, knowing something you never could have known. These are different types of senses. A Sasquatch is attuned to his environment. This attunement opens these natural capabilities. You told a story about a little boy who began to see himself through the eyes of that Sasquatch who picked him up, and he felt calmed. This is actually a transfer of consciousness from the Sasquatch to the boy. It is not surprising that the boy grew into a man with all kinds of extrasensory perceptions. He had a rare experience that opens certain things that normally remain closed in people. A rare master yogi might do this same type of thing with his student to help him open his mind. So, you thought the topic of Sasquatch brought ridicule to people? Well, the topic of miracles and yogis is the same type of thing. If you want to learn more, a lot of ground is covered in Autobiography of a Yogi by Yogananda, and also, more recently, Apprenticed to a Himalayan Master by Sri M. S-R-I-M. My master knew both Sri M's master and his grandmaster, who is also connected to Yogananda's lineage. They are the real deal if you want something very authentic. Sri M also has a story in his book about a Yeti that helped him when he was very sick in the mountains, which I think you would like. Feel free to contact me if you like. May God bless all you seekers of truth and understanding. Brock, this one sounds familiar. I may have read that a long time ago, but at this stage of the game in our journey, mine anyways, it's a real interesting one to read. Right? Very interesting. And that'll be my truck starting up outside from the Big Boss, which is a signal that I gotta go. Damn it! It's just getting warmed up, I think. Shit. Alright, we gotta go. I gotta go get tires on her car before I leave. Got so much stuff to do today before we leave, so I will be back shortly. Alright, you guys? I will be back. I'll be back.